So a sense of gathering into the heart or the belly, and then lengthening the spine and straightening the spine. So as you extend up above, just feel like each vertebra, click, 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 is just adjusting relative to the one beneath it. So when Westerners go to China to study Qigong, and what surprises them is just how long the exercises are repeated for. You know, we tend to think 10 repetitions is enough, but the Chinese will go on for like 10 minutes just doing one exercise. So a sense that the exercise is taking you into like a trance state, or at least that you're losing yourself inside the exercise. You become it. Okay, so one more, and this time just keep the arms out at the side, and we'll pretend the arms are the stick. Okay, so just turn one hand over and then just start turning. And then just holding it. And now just turning the head, and you can turn the hands. As you turn the head, you can just turn both hands over. And then just tipping. Now just bringing the hands up and down. And now let's just climb the rope. So just reaching up and pulling down, reaching up with the other hand. So you're just aiming for maximum extension. So just let the spine tip however it needs to get the hand as high as possible. Now reaching forwards. So to get more extension, you need to turn the head away from where you're reaching. I effectively trying to look behind myself. So just now, like when we pull and we push the stick, but without the stick. So just link your fingers together, sort of mesh your fingers together, and just hold. So squeeze the fingers into each other to make them stick, and then just pull the hands apart, just to create that pressure between them, like a negative pressure. They're pulling away from each other. And just feel it getting into the chest, into the heart region. So you're just setting something up really and just letting it operate. So this is what we would like, when we sit to meditate. There's always the temptation to sort of sit and just sort of fall into a sort of slumber, what they call a stupor. But really, you're sitting in a special position so that the posture can operate upon you. So there's a sense that there's something working and changing you as the minutes go by. And now just pushing the hands into each other a little bit. And then just reverse it again. So just pulling. Just see just how gentle you can get it for it still to have an effect. And then just reverse it again. So just pushing into. Okay, now just reverse it again. So now pulling away. So your fingers are trying to pull away, but your thumbs are sort of pushing into each other. So you've got a little bit of each. So the hands are pulling away from each other, but the two thumbs are pressing into each other. And now let's try it. Remember we did it once before, just the fingertips touching. Just letting them sort of just press very gently into each other, almost like they're just trying to merge. The fingers are melting into the fingers of the other hand. And then just reversing it. So just imagine the fingertips have now stuck together a little bit and you're trying to pull them apart, but they don't actually separate. So there's a sense of the hands pulling away from each other. So just allow it to come into the heart. So we're trying to get it to operate upon the heart area. And then let's just reverse it again. So now just pressing into the other fingers. So this is a sense that the heart is sort of dropping a little bit. It's like breathing out or yielding or descending. And then reversing it. So pulling away. So this is the ascent, the lift, like a flame just lifting through the body. And then one more. So just now pressing into each other again. So feel the descent, the drop. It's like the energy that's built up on the previous one slowly subsides and drops down the front of your body, but feel something extending from the back. So the more you curl up and go inside, the more the energy of the back will billow out. So it's like a darkness, dark in the sense that you can't see it. And then when you pull the fingers away from each other, the energy at the front starts lifting up, but that energy at the back just sucks back into the spine. So there's a sense that you become all front. Keep it going until your third eye is really shining. So how you would have the hands when you're meditating. Yeah, so you can do the same sort of thing when you're sitting, that you can either have a sense that the hands are trying to pull away from each other or that they're trying to push into each other. I mean, John, I just remember one occasion really where he gave us instruction on how to meditate. And it was pretty early on. I think we were doing a long form, but we'd only just started. The points he emphasized was the straight vertical spine, the chin pressed in so that the neck is lengthened, and the hands together, but with a real sense of the elbows out. So the elbows forwards and out. So no sense of the arms collapsing against the body. So very similar to the Tai Chi where you have the open armpits. So that was the thing that he was most sort of strict about. That's the space in the armpits, that sort of feeling that the arm has really just sort of almost come up in order to come out, so that this is really open here. So that's riding horse. So that's basically what we want in the legs and the leg pits when we're in riding horse. Okay, so let's stand up now and meditate standing up. Okay, so riding horse, the perfect standing meditation posture. So the arms with this real feeling that they've just come out. So let's just try the arm really sort of almost the feeling that it's coming out of its socket in order to get into ward off this round shape. So that's the arms. So the way they mention it in the Tai Chi books, the Chinese Tai Chi books, is when they say the arms are bent, but they're wanting to straighten. So this sense that the arms are wanting to fly out, the arms are wanting to come off, they're wanting to fly away. And so you are having to really bend them in order to contain that energy. We just want the same feeling of the arms really almost coming out of their shoulder joints in the legs as well. So a real sense that the leg, so let's just try. So just working, it's more difficult with the legs, obviously, but just this sense that the knee is trying the same way here. It was my hands moving out, but also my elbow. So the elbows are very important to actually open here, and the knees for the legs. So here I'm sending the knee out, and then here sending this knee out. And so what the knee going out is stretching this joint open here, but also getting me into the outside edge of the foot, which is what I want. Knee. So the knees are working. So the knees are wanting to fly outwards rather than forwards. They would want to move forwards if I was moving, if I was walking. But here, they're trying to escape in this direction. So I'm just using my arms to assist in the knees. Feeling the mind, when we did the arm and here, it's like, ooh, It's like something really opens up and it's a little bit daunting. The same feeling here as the hip is pulled open. You realize it. It's like it's got an emotional cast to it. So knee out, knee out. So we're trying to open the hip joints, but without the sacrum moving too much. So we'd like the sacrum to be able to hang heavily through this. You're becoming like an insect with these sort of spindly legs. And then just letting the sacrum just drop. And it will drop down but drift forwards at the same time. But with this same sense of the hips opening. And then let's just come forwards onto the front of the foot. So just lifting the heels. So now you're even more in the knees and even more open here. And then just rocking back, but one at a time, remember? So the heel, using the tailbone to extend the heel back and letting the tailbone come under so that the heel will cut under. And then this one comes up again. So now just So it's just the same exercise really as we've just been doing, this sense of extending part of the body to really open the shoulder or the hip. So here I'm extending the heel to sort of stretch the foot a little bit, but I'm also extending the tail and opening the joint between the coccyx and the sacrum. So just a little bit of mobility there. So the sacrum has 5 vertebrae within it that have sort of fused together, and the coccyx has 3 or 4. Some people have 3, some people have 4. If that could open up, loosen a little, there'd be a lot of mobility in it, a lot of articulation. So now let's just bring it back to riding horse. Just stay in it long enough for the pressure to build up, this feeling that it's wanting to explode. Making sure the sacrum isn't drifting back. Space between the legs. And now let's just try once more. So just coming onto the toes. Come onto the toes by getting your knees to lift. So my knees have a sense that they're lifting up, pulling me down here, and pulling the heels up. And then just heel and heel. It's the rotation that we want in the sacrum. So something goes back and then cuts down, behind and under. And just try and feel which part of your mind is responsible for the coccyx and which part of the mind is responsible for the sacrum. So there's very different. My sacrum is with this movement here, this coming under, but my coccyx is with this movement here going back to extend. There's like a movement in the mind as well. So the coccyx is like it's almost like the front brain. There's like a sense of mischief there. And the sacrum is very much the back brain. So just this sort of cold, almost ruthless aspect. And the coccyx is just this sort of naughty wriggle. And now, just back. And now let's just figure of 8. So trying to keep the sacrum pretty much still in the middle, just turning it. The big figure of 8. So here it's my left hand, and then here it's my right hand. So the way we practice it in my class, just holding like a tennis ball, and then just passing it into the other hand. Trying to make the trace continuous, even though it's switching from side to side. So this is an exercise that they can keep going for a long time, especially when you've got a ball here and you're having to sort of be careful that it doesn't drop. So the arm is escaping and then it's returning. So just feel the difference between the escape and the return. So it's very similar to when we were pressing the hands together and pulling them apart. So this is like the attack or the escape. And then this is the yield or the return. And now just the one hand. So the hand escapes, it returns, and I want it to enter here in the groin. Here, and then it will go under the foot, down the back of the leg, under the foot, and up, and then out again. So I want to feel the anchor to this loop here. And then the other. Loop out, come back, and through this point, down the back of that leg, under the foot, up the inside of the leg, through to the sacrum, up the spine, across to the opposite shoulder and out. And we just want this whole trace to be like a long, stretchy piece of elastic. So it's the mind that lends it the elasticity. The fact that I can just maintain mind continuous. both together. So let's just try, when we do both together, let's just get it going down the other leg. So let's just get this one again. So this is more sort of forwards rather than out to the side. And then here, bringing it down into this one rather than this one. Because this hand is going out, this one here, this hand is actually responsible for the root of that hand, because the root of the left hand is in the right foot and vice versa. So one of the really wonderful things about the figure of 8 is just how rich it is. And you can't really analyze it. You just got to abandon yourself to it and just let it take over, let it possess you. And this is especially true of trying to bring figures of 8s into the form. It's doable and it's really enjoyable, but you can't really analyze it and set it in stone, because how these figures of 8s express will just depend upon your energy and your mood. So it's not really a technique. So it used to really frustrate John, the fact that the work that we did yesterday was just no longer applicable. It just wouldn't work anymore. So we had to invent it anew, come at it from a different angle. And something different would always come out, but of course it's related and it all comes from the same place. So it's very creative, you know, like a poet sort of writing a poem every day. Obviously it's always going to be a different poem, but it's coming from them. The influences will be different, the energy will be different. So there's a sense that your practice session is creative. It's your artistic creation for the day. So you're not just going through these repetitive motions in order to become fitter or better or stronger, but simply to allow this magical energy inside you, expression, sharing your beauty with the world. That's the meaning of life. It's what children do so well. The adults will tend to share their ego with the world. In other words, shit on everything. Whereas, children, they're just full of energy, full of spirit, full of life. And then just try and get it so that, like it's trying to get behind you. So you've got a sense of the figures of 8, so not just in front of you, but all around you. They're swirling around you, almost like you're trying to grab your tail or your min meng. So if you're passing this tennis ball from hand to hand, there's a sense that you can do it behind yourself as well as in front. Bring it back to riding horse again. So just think of the shape, the shape of the heart symbol, the way it comes up into these two lobes and then comes down into a point. So there's something really strong just about that symbol. So this sense of these shoulders that are sort of risen out of the heart and then comes down to a point or to the danchen here. But then the same sense here, like like the hips are these two growths, and the sacrum can just hang down. So this sense that the hips are connecting to the sacrum from on top rather than from the side, where they would tend to push the sacrum up. They've come down on top of the sacrum, and the sacrum is allowed to just hang down. So just having the symbol, using the symbols, so just seeing it in your mind's eye, and you can just trace it. So that's effectively what was happening when we were doing this exercise. And when you're doing the figure of 8, you're tracing a heart. You're feeling this swelling here, and you're feeling this swelling here, and here, and here. So the kidneys very much here, and the lungs very much on the one in the chest. And then you can get it in the head as well, this sense of the two hemispheres of the brain, just looping down to the spot in the chin where so this would be the bottom of the heart, the point at the bottom. And of course, the one in the legs, the point at the bottom would be under the ground. And you can think of them being on the front of your body, but also on the back. So now the one here has the two lobes would be the shoulder blades. And the point, I could think of the point coming down into the min meng or down into the coccyx. And then the one on the back would be these two sides of the occiput here, bringing it down maybe into the equivalent of the min meng on the cervical spine, or down to the sort of dowager's hump. So you can just choose, you can just feel. So as you work, as your mind becomes more capable of staying with what you're doing, you become more sensitive to energy. So that's really, the reason people don't feel energy is because their mind is on other things. So energy is quite subtle. Your mind has to be quite sort of just quiet, but it also has to encourage the energy. So if you've got like a quiet mind that's just waiting for it to happen, it probably won't. You need to have a mind that's quiet, but that's encouraging all the time. It's what I call enthusiasm. That's what children are very good at, and adults tend not to be. Because adults tend to be more skeptical, they've got more sort of life experience, they're a little bit more negative and jaundiced. So you want to retrieve that childhood innocence when it comes to energy and this sort of work, because without it, you'll be missing so much. So we want a real sense that the work that we do transforms us. So the work you do within the session changes the way, not just the way you feel, but the way you are. It changes your energy. So energy, so I used to confuse me a lot. When I felt good within myself, settled and like everything was going right, and then I would come into John's company, those were normally the times when he would tell me how shit my energy was, in no uncertain terms. And it was those occasions where I felt unsettled, I felt flummoxed, or like maybe I'd had to rush back from shopping in order to get there on time. Maybe the bus had been late and I was worried. Those were the times when he said to me, wow, your energy's good, and we'd have a great session. It's nothing to do with how you feel. It's much more to do with just how free your energy is. So if I'd had a difficult time, like getting to John, I remember once I had to come all the way from Manchester down to Gloucester, brought my kids with me. And I was in a real state when I got there, but he says, wow, I've never known your energy like this. And it was just that, I was just active. There was an activity within me. My energy was active. My spirit was active. And so that's energy, really. It's not nothing to do with how good you feel. This is like a real bummer, this. So when your energy's good, you feel sort of fragile and sort of a little bit tearful, like it's all gonna collapse if you're not really, really careful. They say, don't they, that the only places where there's no incidence of depression is in war zones. Because basically depression is a bit like a selfish indulgence. And so when you're in a war zone, you're just really on your toes, just trying to stay alive. You've got no time for that. You've got no time for self-reflection. You just have to be active. And so you're just not depressed. You may be frightened and your life may be in real danger. But that will stimulate the spirit. It won't flatten the spirit, which is what happens when we think to ourselves too much and we have too much time on our hands and too much money at our disposal. And let's just finish just by squatting, just going down. And then just rocking forwards. So just bringing the weight into the arms, letting the strength build up the arms slowly into the middle of the back between the shoulder blades. Feel the coccyx. So it should feel like it's almost trying to erupt out of your skin, out of the skin that's containing it. So almost like a tail could actually sprout out of you. So just use your imagination. It's like delving back into some sort of deep evolutionary history, just remembering the time when we had an active tail. And the time when we were on all fours. And then just rocking back again. Again, extending the tail. So how do you extend the tail? Press the hands together, press the knees apart with the elbows, and push. You're sort of pushing the tail out. And then back up. And then just into riding horse one last time. Real round space here. Imagine that horse. It'd be good practice to sit on a horse. Good practice for a riding horse, I'm sure, is sitting on a real horse. So imagine how big they are and how warm they are and how they're, how sensitive horses are. They're twitching and vibrating all the time. So all of that energy would be coming up into you. So that's really like the energy of the earth. We think, we tend to think that the energy of the earth is like the earth, sort of solid and heavy, but it's not. It's incredibly light. It's the energy that comes down that's going into the earth, that's becoming earth, that's heavy. That's why it's sinking. So something is just vibrating up my legs and up my spine, into my arms and up to the top of my head. And then just bringing it up. So feeling this and just tightening this region. And now here, I've got to somehow straighten my legs without my bum sticking out. So I've got to roll this as I straighten the legs. So a real sense that I'm dropping down the back of my leg as the front of my leg is rising. So the chin in and a real sense of something just extending upwards. So the top of the head as though suspended from above. And it's great working on that when you like go out for a walk, when you can really feel the sky. The earth is sucking my little tailbone down, and the sky is drawing up the snake, the equivalent of the tailbone that's sticking up from the top of the head. It's that enables me to have a root without being heavy and John always used to say that people that have natural roots tend to be a little bit like sacks of potatoes. So just a bit heavy and a bit slow and a bit stupid. So just a sense of activity. Remember that image of when who's it? Is it Arthur who throws Excalibur back into the lake, and the arm comes up out of the lake and catches it, and then takes it down. Almost like you've got a hand coming out of your sacrum, your tailbone, that's just reaching down for the earth, and another hand that's coming out of the back of the head, top of the head, that's just reaching up to the sky. So there's extension. You're extending both ways, but two very different energies. This is like your weight that's extending down, and this is your spirit that's extending up. So it's the fourfold. So the Taoist fourfold. Man, earth, heaven, and Tao. And then Heidegger's fourfold, which I find useful, is the earth, the sky, the divinities, and mortals, so things that will perish. Your beingness, your being in the world is like a matrix of relations to those. So the way you relate to the fourfold determines how you actually exist in the world. And so the divinities, the one that people tend to object to, it's just spirit, really. Yeah, so this sense that there's gods everywhere. Everything has a little god. So just connecting with the spirit especially the spirit in nature, because there tends to be an absolute lack of spirit in the man-made.